Abdul Jabbar, the former all-time leading NBA scorer, the player with the most regular season MVPs in NBA history with 6, and a 6-time champion. What more can I say? His resume speaks for itself, especially when you look at the full one. I guess this video has to be longer than 30 seconds, so I'm just going to be talking about how great this guy was. So Kareem had a post-game to contend with the best of them. That's undeniable. He also had some gravity from there, where he could kick it out to open shooters, and he could often hit cutters in their spots, generating open layups for them. He, of course, was a great scorer with his patented skyhook, which I'm honestly trying to add to my bag, but it's a hard shot, especially to hit in the game consistently. Anyway, this shot made it so he could get his shot over anyone, as he's 7'2", 7'3" with shoes. So when he brings the ball up, barely anyone can ever reach it because just how high it is, yeah. And they would protect the ball with his other arm and his body, making it so people would have to reach over his body to block it if it's not already in the air, where it's practically impossible to block. This helped with his longevity, as this shot didn't require much athleticism, and it also made him unstoppable in the post. Speaking of his post game, he used to struggle against strong defenders, but he buffed up his lower body over time, and that helped him mitigate that problem. This helped him acquire the all-time scoring record of just one three-pointer, which he held until LeBron broke it in 2023. He also had one of the greatest peaks of all time, debatably a top 5 peak ever. He averaged 31.7 points per game and 16 rebounds per game in the 1970-71 season, and won the championship, Finals MVP, and MVP. One of the greatest seasons of all time for a single player. The very next season he won MVP again and averaged 35 a game. And in the 1977 playoffs, he played the best he would ever play in the playoffs, averaging 35 points per game, 18 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 3.5 blocks. As you can tell, he dominated the 70s, but would only win another championship after that initial 1970-71 season, after a certain guy named Irvin Magic Johnson came into the league. He then proceeded to win in 1980, and Magic won Finals MVP. However, this doesn't mean he didn't dominate those finals, but he got injured. He averaged 33.4 points per game, 13.6 rebounds, and 4.6 blocks, shooting 55% from the field and 80% from the line. Did he deserve Finals MVP? I mean, Magic did come in clutch, so you can argue either way. He also won a Finals MVP and became the oldest player in NBA history to win it at 37 years old. He averaged 25.7 points per game, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2.5 stocks on 60% shooting from the field. He did this against Larry Bird's Celtics, so he didn't do this against bums. This, to me, is the greatest longevity feat of all time, as Finals MVP is one of the most prestigious awards in the NBA, and to win it at such an old age speaks volumes on his skill, IQ, and durability. Anyway, there's the most major moments of his career. Now let's go into some details. He faced Wilt Chamberlain quite a few times, having a sort of rivalry against him, being 8-9 against him in the regular season, and being 6-5 against him in the playoffs. He averaged 31.8 points per game, 16 rebounds, 3.6 assists on 46.3% from the field in the regular season. Kareem averaged 29.7 points per game, 4.5 assists, and 7.4 rebounds on 46% shooting from the field in the playoffs. Clearly, an all-time great defender like Chamberlain can bother him, but he can't stop him, as he still averaged almost 30 in the playoffs against Chamberlain, who was the second best defender of the 60s, being beaten out by Bill Russell. He also led the league in blocks 4 times, led the league in field goal percentage once, and led the league in scoring twice. Him and David Robinson were the only players to lead the league in blocks per game, rebounds per game, and points per game in their careers. Now it's time for the big question. Was he a product of a weak era? The 70s are widely considered to be one of the most weak eras of NBA history because the talent was split between the ABA and NBA, with players such as Julius Erving playing in the ABA for most of the 70s. It also didn't help that practically everyone was on drugs at the time. I think he was actually in part a product of a weak era, but I still think he could dominate any era. He was one of the greatest post scorers of all time, and his skyhook practically couldn't be blocked. You can't tell me he wouldn't excel in the 40s and 50s against players that hadn't fully developed the fundamentals yet. He would dominate the 60s because he could still play well against the best player of that era, Wilt. He already played in the 80s and practically dominated. Illegal defense in the 90s would allow him to isolate in the posts, so he would basically just be able to cook. He might be worse in the 2000s because of the lack of spacing and zone defense being allowed. He would easily dominate the 2010s and 2020s because defense stops being geared towards big men and instead gearing towards the perimeter, as shown by the dominance of Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So when would he have been terrible? Exactly. So he wasn't a product of a weak era. Anyway, I hope you can check out my other videos. And yeah, this is John567. See ya.